Hello, good evening, Mr. Peter Lobel. I'm Dr. Ismail Mohammed. I'm a Northern Sudanese Australian living here on Australia for a long time now. I thank you and I thank your guests for such an informative and as we are used from RT and unbiased analysis of what's going on around the world. Just a few points I would like to share regarding your video about the future of Southern Sudan. And just to start with is a comment about I would love to see more of the opinion of us as Northern Sudanese. After all, we are the bigger part of the country. We are 30 million people. So I just always in other media outlets, I always see more emphasis on the opinion of the southern Sudanese, which is only 10 million people, while 30 million people, the opinion of 30 million people from the north are often ignored. For us as Sudanese, and from what I can hear from my friends and family back home, this war that was involving Sudan was not just affecting the south, the southerners. The 2 million people who died on that in that war was from both sides, and we lost family and we lost friends in that war, and we are very glad that that it came to an end, and that our brothers in the south eventually all of us got to the understanding that maybe it will be better for us to live in two independent states and have a good relations as brothers and neighbors rather than being put in one country as our previous colonizers had it believed. Just a few points I want to make. First thing, I will start with the comment about the comments of President Bashir when he talked about switching off the pipelines coming from the south. And if we can put this in context, why President Bashir said so, because you have as is mentioned in your program, you have the infrastructure and the pipelines and refineries are mainly based in the north, while most of the oil coming from the south. But if you listen to his speech that day, he was basically talking to the Southern Sudan government that we have to benefit from that oil passing through the land of Northern Sudan up north to Port Sudan and getting exported from Port Sudan and getting refined in the refineries in the north. Not let's forget that the government of Northern Sudan were the people who actually brought this investment to Southern Sudan. They were the people who actually worked so hard to get that oil extracted from the ground and exported. They were the one who made most of the effort to get that oil up and running. So South Sudan basically was refusing to even pay for the transport and the refining that oil in the north, that's why President Sudan his speech mentioned that we either have to come to an agreement to sharing the wealth, the revenue coming from that oil. If they don't want to share that revenue with us, then they will have to pay transit charges, and that happens everywhere in the world. If you have your oil being transported through another country, you will have to pay transport charges and transit charges, fees for transporting. And that's, again, I'm sure that Russia is the best country to understand what we are talking about. After all, you are one of the biggest oil exporters in the world. And I agree with some of your guests that actually the other point that oil is going to be a stabilizing factor. After all, both parts of the old Sudan rely heavily on the north, despite that the north is that the oil is actually a relatively new wealth to both countries. 5 years ago, that oil did not exist. We, as a country, we survived, yes, in relative poverty for almost 50 years since our independence, or actually maybe throughout our history, back all the way to the Nubian times. We survived without that oil. Sudan, after all, both the north and the south should not be relying on oil. They are both agricultural countries. 80% to 90% of population are actually farmers. We are not. So oil relatively is a new thing, and I'm sure both of them, if they came to the point of losing that oil altogether, their life would probably not change much. Come to another point I want to mention about the kind of help that Southern Sudan needs. I think Southern Sudan at this time needs a lot of help to institutionalize its government, to make viable institutions to look after the people. And I don't think that no one would be able to offer that kind of help apart from the northern Sudanese people, because we were one country. We know the facts on the ground for South Sudan. We know the culture in South Sudan. I don't think trying to introduce any kind of government, whether it's a Western government or any other Western style government or any other type of government that completely foreign to the area, completely unfamiliar with the facts on the grounds, like exactly like the British did when they ended up with their colonization colonization to Sudan. They did not address the issues on the ground, and that's why we had we have a historical fault that thankfully now it's corrected itself, that these are two independent countries. So I don't think that anybody will be able to help the the South Sudan government to create viable institutions than their brothers in the north. If I could just alert all the other media outlets, including RT, to try to dampen that paranoia between the north and the south, and that if we really, the north are hell bent on getting the south to be an unviable state, that will not benefit the north. We do not want to go back to war. We do not, even if the south of Sudan, the southern Sudan falls back into tribalism and war, northern Sudan will probably end up receiving most of these troubles and the refugees, because after all, we share the longest borders in Africa, and we do not want to see that happen. We will be more than happy for them to have a viable state, so both of us can benefit from a good economy for ourselves and for the government of Southern Sudan. And one last point I want to make about the influence in China in Sudan. I'm sure that you are aware that China has a non-intervention policy when it comes to dealing with other governments, which is something you don't often find in the Western countries in general. It made it very clear that it will not intervene in internal affairs for other countries. And something, again, you need to know about Northern Sudan, that we, after colonization, we said never again, after the British colonization and before that the Turkish or the Ottoman Empire, we said never again. So Sudan is made it very clear that it will not accept intervention in its internal affairs, whether it's from China, whether it's from our partners in the European Union or the United States or even the United Nations in that matter. So I think the influence of China over Sudan is very exaggerated, and China know that very well, that it has no influence on Northern Sudan, because as I said, the oil belongs to Sudan. China is just, yes, it's made an investment, but it's actually the receiving end of the oil, and it's up to Sudan whether to stop exporting that oil to China or anybody else. So I think the role of China on Sudan is overestimated, and that's not fair for China, not fair for the Sudanese. So I think China could definitely play an influence as a friend and as somebody with investments that they care about, but whether they will have any actual influence over Sudan, I find that quite untrue. Anyway, thank you very much, and I do enjoy your program, and I'm looking forward to share my views in further episodes. Thank you very much.